On this edition of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast, from Calgary to Cooperstown, the Baseball Hall of Fame calls upon former Cannon star Edgar Martinez. They say patience is a virtue. For Edgar Martinez, he's no stranger to waiting around, whether it was getting to the major leagues in the first place, being patient at the plate in his long MLB career, or most recently for a call from the Baseball Hall of Fame. But in his 10th and final year of eligibility, the Seattle Mariners star finally got the news as Hall of Fame President Jeff Idelson made the announcement Tuesday afternoon.
Over 18 seasons with the Seattle Mariners, Edgar batted .312 with 309 home runs and 514 doubles, retiring as the team's all-time leader in runs, doubles, walks, RBI, extra base hits, and total bases. Seven-time All-Star, won 5 Silver Slugger Awards, finished among the American League's top 5 in on-base percentage 10 times, 3 times leading the league. He drove in 100 or more runs 6 times, scored 100 or more runs 5 times, and won a pair of batting titles. Teveo in Cooperstown, Edgar.
Martinez joins a trio of pitchers in this year's class. He, along with Mariano Rivera, Roy Halladay, and Mike Mussina, will be inducted officially this summer. Alberta baseball fans were treated to the early years of Edgar. He first arrived in Calgary to play for the Cannons in their inaugural season. In 20 games during the 1985 campaign, Martinez hit .353 with 14 RBIs. He was sent back to the Cannons in 1987, where he hit .329 with 10 home runs, 66 RBIs in 129 games. The following season, 1988, was a breakthrough season for Martinez, where he hit a phenomenal .363 with 8 home runs and 64 RBIs in 95 games. His final stint in Calgary came in 1989, where his average was still a hot .345 with 3 more home runs and 23 ribbies in 32 games. Martinez was asked about his time in Calgary when he spoke with the media in a conference call.
Great memories. Calgary was a great town, great place for me to play. A lot of great memories I had, a lot of success playing for the Cannons. And it was the stepping stone to the big leagues. So it was I had a lot of great memories in Calgary.
He was also asked about some of the people he remembers.
I remember Ross, the owner, was a really good person. Had great interaction. Every time I talked to him, it was great interaction. He's just a great man. And the people from Calgary had great memories. It's just great people. And I felt really good when I was around the town and around people in Calgary. A lot of great memories.
Now, when Martinez speaks of Russ, he of course is talking about Calgary Cannons owner Russ Parker. And that's where we start this special edition of the podcast. Parker had a viewing party in Calgary with some other baseball followers awaiting the announcement, and I had the chance to speak with him. Let's go back to the very beginning. When he arrived in town, what was the word around him? What was the scouting report that you had received? And what were you expecting out of this youngster in 1985?
Right. Well, we were told that he was going to be a short-term fix for a third baseman that had gone down on the injury list, and but not to expect too much offense. But he was a pretty good glove at third base, so as it turned out, when he came and joined us, he really was a bit of a punch-and-Judy hitter, and he wasn't driving the ball, a bit soft liners to the opposite field, but, no one worked harder. No one got to the practice before him. Early in the afternoon, he'd take extra hitting and do whatever. And then, of course, the following year, he started driving the ball up the gaps and off walls. But no, initially, we were not expecting too much.
Mm-hmm. When you look back on his time, what sticks out to you in terms of his personality and what he brought to the diamond as a youngster?
Well, again, his work ethic, and he just was always willing to get out on the field for extra work. And, he was sent down on 3 different occasions from Seattle after he'd been called up. And normally the rule was that baseball, coming down from AAA, you were allowed, I believe it was 72 hours to report back to the AAA team, and Edgar was always there the next day, and so I will always remember that. But for sure, nobody worked harder at honing his skills than Edgar. So.
It's a fascinating thing when you think back on guys who get sent back to the minor leagues that early in a career. It can be a little disenfranchising. It can be a little bit. You can be a little bit annoyed, maybe. But did you ever get the sense that he wasn't thinking very highly of the Mariners at that point by sending him down so frequently?
Well, like most players, I think he felt he belonged up there. He had some good ball players ahead of him, so he had to be patient. And Dick Williams, the manager at that time with the Mariners, he was the guy that always wanted the veteran guys. Didn't have the same patience as some managers with the young players. So, yeah, he was a little disturbed, but you know what? He was just determined to get back up there.
I've read this story about how he used to put numbers on tennis balls and put them inside the cages, and when he was hitting them, he'd call out the number as if he was paying that much attention to it. Any kinds of drills or that kind of thing that you remember him doing like that, or just to give us a little bit of an idea as to what kinds of things that really stood out about his work ethic that he was doing on a day-to-day basis?
Well, that's an interesting question. I can't recall exactly, other than the fact that, he was just out there taking ground balls, and he was happy doing it. He was such a nice individual, a good person. So, he wasn't a complainer. I mean, he obviously, he felt that he was maybe somewhat being overlooked at times, but no, for him, it was just all about doing what he had to do to get back up there.
When you think back on that time, do you ever think to yourself, yeah, I knew that guy was going to be a big leaguer, or yeah, I knew that guy was going to be one of the best at his position, or maybe even a Hall of Famer? Did that ever cross your mind when he was here?
Well, I don't know about the Hall of Fame thing, but I certainly felt that he was a major leaguer because of his approach to hitting. I mean, he was the one person you wanted to come to the plate in an RBI situation, because he would make contact. He would do whatever he had to do to put the ball back in play and advance a runner. And then he developed the power that went with it. So you could see that. And the one year, of course, it was 87 year, 88, where he became the league's MVP, and deservingly so.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about what it means to have him in that Hall of Fame conversation, and to be able to talk a little bit about the Cannons and that, and bring baseball back into the forefront here in Calgary.
Well, it means a lot. I mean, as when we look back at, we had some wonderful, highly talented players that went through Calgary, but they just stand out because of who they were, and so. He's so deserving of it. I mean, he's put up the numbers, and he's had an amazing career. So when we look back, some of it has happened here. I mean, obviously the lower minors as well, but it's what he did in Calgary that got him back up to the major leagues, and then he was ready for whatever it was that he was going to be facing. And it's been a remarkable career, and one that I followed closely. Mm-hmm.
One of those things too, where when you're watching, did the idea of him being a DH ever dissuade you from the idea of him being a Hall of Famer? Because the numbers are there, but some thought that maybe because he didn't play in the field that he didn't deserve to be in Cooperstown.
Yes, I know that discussion has gone on at major league level and among the voters for some time. So, I guess he was a pretty decent third baseman also until his knees gave out on him. When he was up there in Seattle, there he was playing on the AstroTurf for a while. Mm-hmm. But no, I think because of his issues with his knees, otherwise he would have played more at third base, although he was replaced by Mike Bowers, a former Cannon as well. But no, he put up amazing numbers at the plate and did it over a long period of time.
When you look back on the years of the Cannons, where does Edgar rank in terms of best performers here in Calgary and here in Alberta? Even, and this is not to say that even the ones who didn't go on to prolific MLB careers, but where does he rank in terms of the best that came through Foothills?
Well, he would be right at the top, I would think. I mean, we had some wonderful ones. I mean, you think of Omar Vizquel, what a talent he was, and you'll never forget what his baseball, what he displayed night after night after night. But it was a short time here. Edgar was here, like I say, for parts of 3 seasons. But we had some, obviously a number of really good, Brett Boone, I can think of him, and Harold Reynolds. There was a really great number of players that I, probably put up almost Hall of Fame numbers over their careers. But he would be the one that when I think of the one player that I think would be most deserving of all the Cannons, it would be him.
Absolutely. It's been incredible to watch him and his performance. Final question for you is, are you planning on heading to Cooperstown for the actual ceremony?
Oh, absolutely. No, I wouldn't miss it. No, and I spoke with him in Seattle about 3 years ago, I guess. I was down there for the U.S. Open golf championship there, and we got a chance to visit very briefly. And at that time, interesting enough, I said to him, it's time you got back in baseball, because he was on the field that night, just with a lot of other dignitaries. And he said, well, I think I'm going to probably think about that. The next day it was announced in the Seattle paper when we were there that he was their new hitting coach.
Unreal.
Yeah.
It's funny how that all comes full circle, and especially given that he had such a talent there at the plate, it makes perfect sense to have him teaching some of the younger ones as well. Russ, I appreciate the time, and thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, anytime. Thank you.
We continue the podcast with a man who spent a lot of time around the Cannons, both for and covering the team. Radio broadcaster Mark Stevens started up the Remember the Calgary Cannons Facebook page about a year ago, and we chatted with him in the last couple of days to talk about Edgar's trip to Cooperstown. When you look back on his arrival, 1985, first year of the Cannons being here, it was only a kind of a cup of tea in a sense in that first stint here, but what really stands out to you over those 3 or 4 seasons that he was a part of the Calgary Cannons organization?
Well, first, he was very good right off the bat. I mean, there was little doubt that he had just a confidence about him at the plate and just a presence that you knew he was going to be a very good player. And that's exactly what happened. He just stood in there, right-hand hitter, extremely patient. That's one thing, too. A lot of guys think they can just, swing their way to the big leagues. He was very patient and stood in there. And, it was clear he was a pretty well-crafted hitter and that good things were on their way.
Talk a little bit about his demeanor. I mean, he's a young kid coming up through the system, and it's one of those things. You're probably up in Canada for one of the first times ever. It had to have been a little bit of a culture shock for him.
Yes, it was. He was quite quiet, and there was also the language barrier. He wasn't completely fluent in English. It was a fairly heavily accented Spanish because he's from Puerto Rico and New York City. So there was a bit of a barrier there. It was hard he wasn't unpleasant or anything, but it was a little hard to break through just because I think he's generally quite a quiet person anyway. And then, as you say, far away, and there's a bit of a language barrier as well. He spoke well enough, he understood well enough, but I don't think he had 100% confidence in his language abilities either.
One of the things that stood out to me when talking to Russ about Edgar last year about the possibility of him being inducted was the fact that when he first arrived, he was thought of as being more of a defensive specialist. In fact, his hitting was sort of suspect at the time. Talk a little bit about that shift from being that defensive star to being a hitting sensation and the kind of work that he had to put up here in Calgary.
Well, there's no question he put in a lot of work because you're right about that. He was a guy that came up and almost always played third base. And, of course, that was a role reversal in the major leagues. He was almost always a designated hitter there. But, no, he was very good. He had a good steady arm. He had a good presence. Probably wasn't quite as mobile as you like at third, but he was very good. And, his hitting was important. But, no, he was a very steady third baseman. And, I'm surprised he didn't play more at the big league level, but that's their decision. And maybe it was just a function of age. But, no, he was more than a capable third baseman. And, at a relatively young age, he was thrown into playing third base here and did for much of the next 4 years.
One of the things that I've seen about him as well is he used to take tennis balls and put them in the pitching machine, and he'd have them numbered. And the focus that he put into it was that he would, as he was swinging, tell you what number was on the ball. That's how focused he was and laser focused he was on making sure that he was paying attention to every pitch.
Well, there's your story right there on how you get to the Hall of Fame, right? If you have that kind of focus, that kind of dedication, that kind of insight into hitting and want to improve your craft so much that you would do things like that, that's how you get there. I mean, it's a extraordinarily difficult skill to be a major league hitter and be an accomplished major league hitter, and you have to put in that kind of work, and that's what he did. So in a nutshell, that might be Edgar Martinez and how he made it to the big Hall of Fame.
When you saw him play, did you ever think back in the mid to late 80s that, hey, this might be a guy that might make it to the Hall of Fame one day?
Hall of Fame, no. I can't lie to you. I thought he'd be a very good, long-term, accomplished major league player, but Hall of Fame, probably not. The thing that you look at his stats is he never really had, until the very end, much of a drop-off. I mean, he, several years between batting titles, he was always well in the 300s. It was pretty remarkable, his consistency and his durability as a designated hitter. I mean, after a while, they start to figure out. But no, Edgar was pretty remarkable, pretty amazing. But I thought he'd be an accomplished major leaguer. But I can't sit here and say that Hall of Fame jumped off the page at me. But nonetheless, he's earned it. But I did think he'd have a very solid big league career, yes.
Needless to say, this is a bit of a feather in the cap for the Calgary Cannons organization. But at the same time, this might be one of the only times where a Cannon actually gets inducted into the Hall. Talk about the significance of that.
Well, you're right about that. I did, a little work. You look back through it, and, there's a lot of guys that had a good time here and then went to the big leagues and had good, but maybe not great careers. Dave Burba had some 20-win seasons and pitched well for Cleveland and Cincinnati for many years. But you're talking the best of the best. The only other name that comes to my mind is Alex Rodriguez. His, stats and totals would certainly suggest he's a Hall of Famer, but there's a lot of baggage that comes with him for off-field stuff, and there's been others that have been caught up in all of that. So I don't know what his situation is. I think it's going to be something, for the voters to decide in a few years, but all I can tell you is people like Barry Bonds, accomplished players, and Clemens aren't in the Hall of Fame, and will Alex Rodriguez fall into that trap as well? Other than that, I'd be surprised if there's really anybody that gets serious consideration for the Hall of Fame, despite all the great talents that came through here.
Right around this time, when we get a big announcement like this and the potential of a Hall of Famer, that kind of thing, everybody kind of waxes nostalgic a little bit, and especially around Cannons. And I mean, we've talked a little bit about Foothills, you and I have on different occasions. When you look back on those years of the Cannons, what sticks out most for you?
Well, I think first of all, just I guess because I'm a little bit of a purist, just the opportunity to see such an elite level of baseball, such a great array of talent, both Cannons and visitors coming through here on just a regular basis. They were all right here. What stood out is just that it became such a fun go-to place for so many of the years. Things diminished in the latter years when people just wouldn't come out in the cooler weather in April and May. But just the talent. Just the overall fun. For the first few years after the team left, I was regularly getting emails or people stopping me, asking me about this player or that player, or where did this coach go and things like that. So, and what was also exciting is it happened more than once that you'd watch a guy at Foothills or Burns one day, and then Saturday he was on TV pitching in a Yankee Stadium or somewhere like that. It was quite a, amazing ride to see so many players move from one to the other. I mean, Barry Bonds played here, and so many of the others just came through here, and it was pretty amazing, I got to say.
And that's one of the things that you're kind of focusing in on. You created the Remember the Calgary Cannons Facebook page for that reason. Talk a little bit about the memories that you've seen so far shared surrounding the organization.
Well, a lot of them have been very good. Just people just saying how much they missed it. And, people had said they worked there and had a lot of fun. People would say they would bring their daughter or son to 4 games a year, 5 games a year. That was a lot of fun. We have had a player, Brett Boone, jump in and say, I missed that. It was so great. And, just a lot of great memories and nostalgia. It's a lot of fun. This all started, I guess, ironically, as you were talking about with Edgar's possible induction last year. I said, well, that'd be kind of neat to do something something about it. And then I said, well, somebody should do something about it. And then I said, I guess I'm a somebody, so let's do something about it. So I made up the page roughly a year ago today, and have really enjoyed it, diving back into the books and seeing some of the stars and some of the great players that came through here.
And not only that, but you get to see some of the old school swag as well, right? And bring that out for good reason.
That is kind of funny, yeah. Some of the old backpacks and squirt bottles that were given away, and dragged the jacket out. I kept it in a kind of a spot in the back of the house there, and now I got a reason to drag it out and put it on, which I will do surrounding Edgar's induction announcement.
Thanks to Mark Stephen as well as Russ Parker earlier on in the podcast for joining us. That'll do it for this edition, but if you head on over to albertadugoutstories.com, our own Ian Wilson has penned a great story on Edgar and his Calgary connections. It includes quotes from former teammates like Brett Boone and Mario Diaz. We also, of course, want to again congratulate former Calgary Cannons star Edgar Martinez on being named to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Thanks again to all of you for listening and supporting Alberta Dugout Stories.